She believed goodbye meant forever, that some doors close without echo, without return. Madison learned the rhythm of small-town life, where winter hangs longer than heartbreak, and everyone knows your name before your story. But no one knew the truth she carried the longest. Benjamin was the chapter she never got to read twice, the silence he never explained, the promise he never spoke. The town called him Big Dreams Ben, the boy who left chasing skyscraper lights and investor handshakes. People here say things like, "Time moves slow, but truth moves slower." And in her heart, nothing moved at all for years. Until one November morning, when the wind carried a rumor that sounded impossible. Benjamin returned when the town least expected him, not dressed in charm but clothed in collapse. He came back with deep cracks and quiet thunder after losing deals, trust, identity, and sleep. Some sighed when they saw him and whispered, "Big money can't buy a soft heart, huh?" Others simply watched as the prodigal steps of a proud man touched the soil of a humble town. But Madison, she didn't whisper. She remembered that heaven loves a comeback story, that God is fluent in rewriting endings. And while the whole town saw the return of a millionaire, God wanted them to witness the return of a man to himself. She thought he'd never look back, but grace doesn't ask permission, it just arrives. And you're about to hear a story where timing is a character too, where forgiveness wins arguments pride once memorized, where humility wears heavier crowns than success ever forged. If you want more stories like this, emotional, redemptive, stitched by faith, don't leave this one halfway read. Stay until the end. The best transformations happen after the world thinks the credits rolled. Subscribe for more stories. God still rewrites lives you thought were over. The last night before Benjamin left did not look like an ending. The town was wrapped in fall colors and soft porch lights. Madison walked down Maple Street with her jacket pulled tight. She could smell cinnamon from Mrs. Graves's bakery on the corner. Kids were carving pumpkins on front steps, laughing too loud. Somewhere a radio played old country songs about staying. Madison tried not to hear the words because he was leaving. They had agreed to meet behind the old high school bleachers. It was the spot where summers used to last forever, where they shared sodas, secrets, and half-whispered dreams. Madison's boots crunched on fallen leaves as she walked. Every step sounded like a countdown she had not chosen. She rehearsed brave sentences in her head and failed. How do you say goodbye to someone who never fully said hello? Benjamin was already there, hands in his pockets, head down. The field lights painted his shadow long across the grass. He wore that same faded hoodie everyone in town recognized. It made him look like the boy he used to be. Not the future CEO people whispered about in church pews. He kicked a pebble like it had personally betrayed him. When he finally looked up, guilt flashed before his smile. "Hey, Mads," he said, soft like the word might break. No one else called her that. It was his private nickname. It carried years of inside jokes and shared late-night talks. She hated that it made her chest warm instantly. "Hey, stranger," she tried to tease, but her voice trembled. He noticed and pretended he didn't, like he always did. Avoiding her feelings had become his unofficial second language. "So this is it," she said, forcing a half-smile upward. "The big goodbye before the big city swallows you whole." He chuckled, but his shoulders stayed tense, almost defensive. "You know how it is in this town," he answered. "If you don't leave, everyone thinks you failed by default." He said it casually, like a joke locals tell at diners. But his eyes searched hers, asking for a permission slip. Madison glanced at the empty bleachers, then up at the sky. The stars were brighter than any city light he chased. "Not everyone who stays is stuck," she whispered, almost apologizing. "In this town, staying is also a kind of courage." She thought of her mama's words, heard 1,000 times. "Bloom where God plants you, honey, even if it's small soil." Tonight, those words felt like they were losing a war. He leaned back against the cold metal and exhaled slowly. "Out there, no one knows my last name or my past. No one remembers when Dad lost the farm and gave up." He said it with the flat tone of an old wound. "This town never forgets anything, good or bad, you know. In the city, I get to write my own headline." He smiled, but it never reached the tired in his eyes. Madison swallowed the frustration burning at the back of her throat. She understood his hunger for more, even if it hurt. He had always been the boy who stared past horizons. She had always been the girl who noticed what was near. "You really think skyscrapers will feel like home?" she asked quietly. "In this town, home comes with people who know your coffee order, and who bring casseroles when life falls apart without warning." He laughed lightly, that familiar, half-sarcastic, half-defensive laugh. "Don't start preaching small-town gospel to me now, Mads. Besides, I'll visit, you know I will," he added quickly. The promise hung in the cold air like weak smoke. People in their town used to say, "I'll swing by sometime." Everyone knew it was code for maybe never, but sounds polite. Tonight his words felt like that same kind of maybe. She stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne. It was the one he only wore on important days. Graduation, job interviews, that time he met investors online. He smelled like goodbye, dressed up as new beginnings. "Just don't forget where you came from," she murmured. "In this town, we still pray your name at dinner tables. And not because you're successful, but because you're ours." His jaw tightened for a second, then softened with regret. He reached up and brushed a stray strand of hair. The gesture was so gentle it made her knees weak. "You're the one thing I could never forget, Madison." He said it like a confession he hadn't planned to voice. Her heart soared and shattered at the same exact time. Words like that only hurt more when no commitment follows. She wanted to say, "Then stay or take me with you." But in their town, girls were taught not to chase boys, and Madison's pride was stitched together with quiet dignity. So she just nodded, as if his half-confession were enough. Silence spread between them, thick as November fog. The stadium lights hummed overhead like they were listening. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath for them. "Do you ever think God is calling you out there?" He asked it suddenly, like he needed heaven to agree. "Like maybe he wants me to be the guy who made it. The one who proved this town wrong about our family name." The question sliced through her like a hidden blade. Faith was not a ladder to her. It was roots. But for him, tonight, it sounded like his ticket out. Madison took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. In church, they say God doesn't just call people to stages. Sometimes he calls them to porches, diners, and hospital hallways. Calling isn't always louder, sometimes it's just closer, Ben. He looked away, jaw working, as if her words scratched something. "I can't stay here," he repeated, this time with finality. "I need to know I'm more than this zip code." She felt something crack inside, quiet but deep, like ice. If she pushed harder, he would only push back further. If she begged him, she would lose herself and him. So Madison chose the hardest thing her heart ever did. She let him go while he was still standing there. "Then go," she whispered, trying to make it sound blessing. "Just promise you won't let success turn you into a stranger." He stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. It wasn't careful anymore. It was desperate and uneven. She could feel his heartbeat racing against her cheek. "Small-town girl, big faith," he murmured into her hair. "That's how I'll always remember you. You know that." His words felt like a frame she never asked to wear. Still, she clung to him for one extra heartbeat anyway. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright, but unshed. He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "Just once. Take care of this place while I'm gone, okay? In this town, you're kind of the glue," he admitted. She laughed weakly, that soft, watery laugh of surrender. "Somebody's got to keep the lights on," she replied. It might as well be the girl who never left. He turned toward the parking lot where his car waited. Each step away from her felt louder than his promises. She watched his shoulders, broad and tense, move into darkness. For a moment, she imagined him turning back and staying. But some scenes only happen in the movies, not here. The engine roared to life, slicing the night in two. Then taillights disappeared down the road leading out of town. Madison stood there long after the sound had faded, the cold metal of the bleachers pressed against her palm. She whispered a shaky prayer into the chilly night. "God, please don't let him lose himself out there. In case he ever looks back, let him still recognize home." In small towns, people say hope is stubborn like that. Madison didn't know it yet, but heaven had heard her. The town didn't ask questions when Madison doubled her shifts. In small places, grief looks like work, routine, and extra coffee. She tied her apron at dawn inside the Granny Lois Cafe. The bell above the door jingled. a sound too cheerful for her chest. Mrs. Graves slid warm muffins across the counter and sighed. "Child, pain is heavy, but bills don't take a day off, do they?" Madison nodded. Faith didn't make life easier, just steadier. Benjamin was the story people quoted like yesterday's weather. Boy left before winter, huh? Hope he packed better than ambition. At the Maple County Post, rumor was public sport, but no one saw the private frost under her ribs at supper time. Her mama tapped her knuckles softly over mashed potatoes and said, "Some hearts wander. Strong hearts stay long enough to pray twice." In the silence, she swallowed longing with gravy and grit. December came slow, draped in lights she never cared to admire. Snow clung to rooftops like unspoken things clinging to old goodbyes. At the Mrs. Graves' bakery, sugar smelled like nostalgia. She watched children decorate cookies shaped like stars they could spell. A car outside backfired, making her shoulders jump like startled deer. Mrs. Lois wiped her hands on flour and murmured a town truth. In winter, sound travels farther than apologies. She borrowed boots from the Hales hardware store. The soles were thick, necessary. The heart had no such insulation. She walked the snowy Maple Street at dusk, breath visible, carrying dinner to the neighbor whose roof buckled with storm weight. In this town, you lift others even when your soul needs lifting. Pastor Aaron once preached on a folding chair by the gym. Madison whispered back, "Amen," even if pride had mocked folding chairs. Winter nights felt theatrical without music or script. She shoveled driveways for elders from Pine Grove Church. Her gloves soaked through, her courage soaked deeper. "Hope warms slower than soup, honey," her mama said. But she kept ladling it out anyway on other people's porches. The town hummed carols like background singers, unaware that her heart refused melody after Benjamin boarded his future. Grief here came seasoned with peppermint and quiet labor. At Christmas Eve, the city sent postcards but no presents. The Mapletown USPS counter stacked greetings. She scanned envelopes, half hoping one would carry his handwriting. But hope arrives handwritten rarely and subtle always. "Letters are brave until their avoidance," she murmured. She mailed nothing back to no one, and everyone understood. In small places, silence gets translated without subtitles. She volunteered for the Mapletown winter dinner, serving turkey to families who knew each other's middle names. "Pass the plate, not the past," people joked kindly. But tonight, her past was a plate she couldn't fully pass. Benjamin had never joined her table, never worn a seat at feasts. Now his absence sat heavier than full plates ever sit. "Grace fills seats pride once rejected," Pastor Aaron said again. Madison sat by the Wilkins Diner radiator, warming numb fingertips while her heart stayed exposed to ice. "Cold seasons prove who's seasonal and who's foundation," Grandma Wilkins said, stirring cocoa slow enough to sermonize. Madison smiled weakly, eyes misting more than cocoa steam. Her friend Emma Clark nudged her boot gently. "Mads, you're allowed to thaw. Not everything here is goodbye." But Grace didn't rush the thaw. It prepared it. She taught Sunday school extra hours inside the church, organizing nativity costumes with cotton snow she recycled. "In this town, we make miracles with what we already have," Emma joked. But her joke felt like prophecy accidentally. Because Madison built stages for others while refusing spotlight, refusing applause, refusing the drama Benjamin feared. She glittered crowns for angels that weren't her storyline. Calling wasn't louder. It was nearer. Benjamin's absence felt like an echo she kept muffling. Town stories get retold like seasons they never outgrow. She lit candles at Cornerstone Library Reading Group, reading psalms aloud to calm the anxious hearts of mothers. God shelters better than tomorrow, better than ambition, better than headlines pride once needed, she said gently. The town listened like poetry was their second national anthem. Her heart softened a little without fully thawing yet. January storms rattled windows like accusations of nature. Small towns still feel sacred even when they tremble. She babysat for Lily, Jessica's gentle, quiet little girl, reading bedtime stories while the power flickered once. "The grid fails us sometimes," Jessica said apologetic. "But faith holds longer than electricity ever will, huh?" Madison nodded, candle in hand, private lightning in her chest. She helped organize the Mapletown Christmas market, and hot cider burned her tongue but warmed her spirit. Not a dramatic fire, just near warming like Graceworks. Cold doesn't cancel belonging, Emma told her again. Madison nearly replied, "Tell that to my heart." But she didn't need to speak it. Emma could subtitle her ribs. Small places instinctively sense unsaid wounds like weather pressure. Grace adjusts internal temperatures on a divine schedule. She fed stray cats by Pine Creek Bridge, snowflakes clinging on whiskers that weren't her unvoiced longing. Even bridges get rebuilt when needed, Jessica mused when watching her. Madison kept scattering crumbs near foundations, breaking in silence. Hope was her payroll even when money was tight. In cold seasons, small towns gossip about resilience like sport. Tonight, resilience hugged frost where Benjamin never officialized her name. Faith didn't holler, it persisted. She took photos for the Hale family charity gala, subtly glancing at Hale's committee plaque she never asked to carry. "Calling isn't always loud," Pastor Aaron repeated. "Sometimes it's just closer. Sometimes it stays." Everyone wore glamour inside the heated hall of perception, but no one saw the private frost piece by piece under her ribs. Grief didn't holler. It persisted like town winter always asserts. Faith was her insulation, only internalized for now. She quilted blankets for nursing home folks by Hale Nursing Home. "Some hearts wander," Jessica whispered. "Strong hearts stay long enough to pray twice." A motorcycle rattled bridge planks, making her shoulders jump. Mrs. Aaron's words felt like poetry her universe once memorized. She smashed avoidance lightly while knitting continuity instead. Grief here came peppermint, punctual, and steady. February carried frost, a durable season for patched hearts. In small towns, hope warms slower than casserole soup. Shadows slip through like unauthorized drafts on story pages. Madison lit lamps for colder memories she couldn't rush to thaw. "Cold seasons prove what's foundation," Emma said again. Madison exhaled. Not everything in small towns is forever goodbye, but faith persists even when hearts don't have insulation. She stacked mugs at dawn, smiled at diners, lumens soft behind her eyes. Her heart remained unsheltered but taught to stand anyway. "Hope is stubborn like winter revisits zip codes," Jessica teased gently. Madison nearly teased back. "Tell that to my heart." But small places spoke enough through lunch plates without script. Faith didn't holler. It stayed near enough to pray twice. And Grace was quietly preparing the season where he would look back again. Spring would arrive eventually. It always arrives. But winter had a curriculum too. Stay, serve, and pray again, until your own heart believes the story God keeps translating. Madison passed plates with one quieter lesson memorized. Love rebuilds what pride never officially announced. The town listened because small towns always translate silence fluently, and Grace was quietly rehearsing the moment Benjamin would open his eyes again. The thaw began not in warmth, but in noticing. Madison spent mornings sweeping fallen pine needles from the steps of Pine Grove Church. People greeted her with "Mornin' Mads," as if her smile were part of the town's infrastructure, reliable like sunrise. But her heart still carried a winter tattoo no one questioned. In small towns, pain is a quiet tenant, rarely evicted early. She joined the community council at Maple Community Hall, planning food drives and charity breakfasts for storm-hit families. Folks here rebuild with neighbors, not newsletters, Councilwoman Janet Millers reminded her firmly. Madison almost laughed. Benjamin rebuilt with headlines always louder. She rebuilt with can openers, casserole trays, and presents. Transformation here was slow, unbranded, but public anyway. Benjamin's name still trailed conversations like drifting snow. At the Hales Hardware, old-timers sipped coffee from paper cups and joked, "Bet the big world dimmed his shine a bit, huh?" Madison kept her laugh polite, but her mind loud. Some shine dims for humility to finally have a stage. Calling doesn't scream here, it stays long enough to witness. She read Psalms aloud weekly with the Cornerstone Library evening reading group, mostly mothers holding toddlers on laps. "Mountains don't shake what God holds steady," Madison would always repeat before opening a new psalm. Little did she know mountains were also a backdrop for heartbreaks. Still, she read verses with voice warm and resolved. Small towns collect scripture like heirlooms passed by touch. One evening, the council prepared the Mapletown Fire Relief fundraiser. Folding chairs scraped the floor like unelegant thunder. Madison stacked donation boxes taller than her doubts. Pride builds stages. Faith builds towns, Emma said sagely. Madison almost whispered back, "Tell that to his ambitions." But the town already knew every internal forecast. Grace moves communal here, always unnoticed once begins. She found herself mentoring teens at the church youth group. Inside the old brick gym, she painted banners reading, "Bloom here, God sees here, stay here," because youth often chase glamour too early. "You're kind of the anchor here, Mads," teen leader Lucas Gray told her. Madison smiled gently like bruised glass warmed by morning beams through windows. Some callings serve people, others story councils that hold truth fluently. The anchor metaphor stung, but God-fluent remained. At the Wilkins Diner, Benjamin Hale might visit for Thanksgiving, whispered through the diner vents. Vent metaphors are irrelevant here, but the town is always literal like weather tenants. Madison's boots tapped the diner linoleum like impatient hints. "Big world dimmed his shine, huh?" a local repeated. Madison drank cocoa quietly, her heart thaw slower. Because thaw comes slowly without permission slip verification. She delivered care baskets, stamped hope, home, continuity, from the Mapletown Samaritan Outreach Charity Station. April wines blew loud enough to slice cardboard ends, but not loud enough to drown internal church gym poetry. "In this town, we survive with soup, not sparkle," she said. But spark is not needed here. Internal semantic tenants served instead. Costumes, speeches, donation trays, and presents build towns quietly. Mother Graves asked her to photograph the town bridge repainting, structured like town architecture steps always assert. Pine Creek Bridge was being rebuilt after flood cracks. Madison pressed camera firmly. Rebuilding isn't replay, flood is tenant. The younger girls gossiped like seasonal sport. But occasional gossip becomes prophecy accidentally, because bridges rebuild even when pride boards town exits. She worked late hours at the Granny Lois Cafe, steaming almond milk into cappuccinos for workers pulling double shifts after winter storms buckled barns. "You really think he'll stay this time, Mads?" Emma asked gently. Madison froze, stirring cocoa slower than electricity warmed steel. Winter ended months ago, but her frost tenant remained. Faith thawed, heart thaw slower, always community audible. At Hale Nursing Home, she read letters to elders whose eyesight had blurred headlines, but whose hearts still remembered welcome. "City lights fade," elderly resident George Harlan told her softly. "But kindness? That's hometown currency." Madison smiled gently. "Some currency is glitter. There's presence. But presence holds longer than investment slogans." She joined the Hale family Thanksgiving dinner planning committee. The menu was infrastructure, turkey, gravy, memory pies. Memory pies are acceptable colloquial region customs. Madison's pen hovered over clipboards heavy internal tenants. She planned how chairs line, not grudges sit. Because grudges don't scream here, they get translated gently. One twilight, she drove the old outreach van marked, "Hope warms slower than soup," an inside phrase the town gifted her frequently. The Hope tenant curriculum was a local shutdown, but she persevered with donation trays with no specific color, because recency detail planning remains internal. But faith can hold presence longer than headlines buy. At the Maple County Post Office mailbox, she glanced donation letters addressed to businesses hit by storms. A letter address is irrelevant here, safe skip rule. But small-town trenches get rebuilt only local drop. Madison scanned headlines, careful internal flood marks. Because flooding builds stories in frost page memory. Benjamin's name still echoed like seasonal forecast. At the Hales hardware porch bench, old Tom smirked kindly while sipping black coffee and said, "Comes roaring back like he owns the road, huh?" Madison nearly said, "Tell that to his heart." But small towns always subtitle ribs, no script needed. She visited the Hale family farm, straightening fence posts after storms rattled barns like accusations, unelegant nature voices. To town folks, fences get straight, long sermons. But sermon is irrelevant here. Internal faith tenants served anyway. Madison hammered fence nails like unspeaking tenant. Fences here rebuild quietly without replay permission. At Mapletown Samaritan Outreach, she organized Christmas toy drives for storm-hit mothers. Small towns lift others even when souls need lifting, Lucas said. Madison inhaled cinnamon from October that still clung memory tenant. Not everything in towns is forever goodbye, but heaven already took payroll for future rewrites. The weather thawed early March, faith only, internal tenant. Small-town thespians memorize, but life don't follow stage. Madison stood by the bleachers one last time while Flood rebuilt. Some scenes repeat for redemption to finally start speaking. Even bleachers would one day host a return too. And while snow had melted from rooftops months ago, Madison finally began to recognize the weight always was Pride's tenant. Not her tenant alone. Benjamin was being rewritten quietly too. In small towns, grace doesn't holler. It lingers long enough to pray twice, shovel driveways, rebuild bridges, and notice hearts. And heaven had already scheduled the knock, even if no one knew yet. The day the rumor became real started like any other. Madison tied her apron at the cafe before sunrise. Maple Street was still half asleep, windows dark, sky gray-blue. The bell above the door jingled to the rhythm of routine. Locals slid into booths, ordered the usual, without looking up. In small towns, comfort is knowing your coffee before your name. She thought the day would be another quiet repetition of surviving. By mid-morning, the air shifted the way it does before storms. Not in the sky, but in the way voices lowered mysteriously. Emma slid onto a stool at the counter, eyes wide, whispering, "Don't freak out, but I just saw a black SUV by Hales." In their town, a black SUV meant outsider, money, or both. Madison's hand stilled over a coffee pot mid-pour, breath snagging. Plates first, panic later, she muttered. Half prayer, half defense. The news spread faster than the specials board could be erased. At Wilkins' diner, someone said, "He's back," like reporting weather. At the post office, they added, "Looks like he lost some weight." By the time it circled back to the cafe, it had grown. Benjamin Hale is back in town, and he looks different. Different was small-town language for ruined, humbled, or both. Madison wiped the same spotless spot on the counter, heart racing. Mrs. Graves poked her head a través da porta da cozinha, flower on cheek. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. Madison forced a laugh that sounded nothing like laughter at all. "Just tired, that's all. Long winter," she replied, eyes avoiding windows. Mrs. Graves studied her with that soft X-ray look older women have. "Well, if ghosts come in needing pie, we'll feed them too," she shrugged. In this town, feeding people was their first response to everything. She told herself it could be anyone in that SUV, really. Mas o coração tinha memória melhor do que a lógica dela. Every time the doorbell chimed, her pulse leaped, then scolded itself. Regulars came and went. Farmers, teachers, a delivery guy humming hymns. Yet somewhere between refilling mugs and clearing plates, the room changed. The door opened and the air felt like it forgot how to move. Silence arrived 5 seconds before she found the courage to look up. There he was, Benjamin, standing in the doorway like a question. The boy she remembered was gone. A man with tired eyes remained. His shoulders seemed broader, but his posture looked smaller somehow. The expensive coat couldn't hide the weight of nights without rest. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes, not from laughter. He scanned the cafe, bracing for judgment like a man entering court. Then his gaze collided with hers, and the past roared back alive. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to the space between their eyes. Her memories tried to overlay themselves onto the man before her. Late-night talks under bleachers whispered dreams that almost confession breath, but they didn't fit perfectly anymore. Life had folded new wrinkles. She saw regret there, raw and unpolished, not dressed for display. He saw dignity, steadier than before, rooted deeper than small-town soil. Neither of them spoke. The room seemed to hold its breath too. The spell broke when Mrs. Graves called from the kitchen, "Table 4's waiting on pancakes, Mads." Reality snapping like fingers. Madison blinked, cheeks flushing, and looked away first. She grabbed the coffee pot like a shield, moving toward another table. In small towns, you keep working, even when your world just shifted. Her hands poured without spilling, but her heart sloshed over everything. Benjamin stepped aside, letting an elderly couple pass before entering fully. He chose a corner booth, the one near the fogged window, the same spot he once studied college brochures and escape plans. Now he slid into it more slowly, like gravity had doubled. Emma appeared beside Madison, whispering, "Do you want me to take him?" Madison swallowed, feeling a whole winter of prayers rise in her throat. "No," she said softly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "If God brought him back here, I can walk 10 steps. Those 10 steps felt longer than the road he'd taken years ago." She walked toward his table, hearing every clink and murmur magnified. He looked up as her shadow reached his plateless table. For a moment, neither of them seemed to know the script. "Hey, Mads," he said, same nickname, very different tone. This time it sounded like an apology dressed up as a greeting. Her name in his mouth felt like an old song sung slower. "What can I get you?" she asked, voice almost steady. She clung to the safety of routine like a lifeline. In small towns, menus are comfort when emotions aren't. Benjamin glanced at the laminated options he'd once mocked. "Just coffee, however you usually make it for yourself," he said. That sentence slipped past her defenses with dangerous tenderness. He wasn't asking for flavor. He was asking for familiar. As she poured his coffee at the counter, Emma leaned close. "He looks like somebody turned the volume down on his pride," she whispered. Madison shot her a look, half warning, half agreement. "Don't read his whole soul off one cup," she murmured back. Still, her own eyes betrayed her, drifting to him uninvited. He sat with hands wrapped around the empty mug, staring at nothing, like a man thawing out after standing in a storm too long. She set the coffee down gently, careful not to brush his fingers. The smell of roasted beans rose between them like a peace offering. "Thanks," he said quietly, voice lower than she remembered. Up close, she could see dark circles under his eyes, and a small scar near his temple she'd never seen before. "Town treating you okay?" she asked, the safest question available. In their region, that phrase carried layers: gossip, grace, and warning. He huffed out a humorless smile, eyes dropping to the steam. "Depends who you ask, I guess," he answered. "Some folks look at me like I'm a headline gone wrong." His thumb traced the rim of the mug, restless, searching. "Truth is, I barely recognize myself some days." Madison's heart clenched at the honesty she'd begged God to grow in him. Pride rarely admits confusion. Brokenness almost always does. She leaned back slightly, apron strings digging into her waist. "Around here, we still believe people can come back different," she said softly. Her own words surprised her, steady and kind instead of sharp. "We don't erase what happened, but we do keep extra chairs." In their town, extra chairs were theology and wood and metal. Benjamin finally looked up again, eyes shining in a way not from success. "Do I still have a chair here?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. For a second, the room disappeared again, and it was just them. She thought of the girl who watched his taillights leave years ago, of the prayers whispered to a God she sometimes didn't understand, of winters spent serving plates while waiting for her heart to thaw. "Chairs don't move themselves," she replied, lips curving faintly. "But if you're willing to sit different, the seat's still there." It was the closest thing to grace she'd ever spoken directly to him. A beat of silence passed. Then he let out a shaky breath. "I didn't come back to impress anyone," he confessed. "Honestly, I came back because everywhere else stopped feeling like me." The admission hung there, vulnerable and unpolished like a cracked mirror. Madison nodded slowly, feeling something deep inside shift position. "Then maybe this is where the real story starts," she said. Outside, wind rattled the cafe windows like applauding hands from heaven. As she walked away, per enchera agua de otra mesa, she caught her reflection in the stainless steel of the coffee pot. She didn't look like the abandoned girl at the bleachers anymore. She looked like a woman who had stayed, served, and survived. In small-town America, that was its own kind of crown. She didn't know what Benjamin's return would rewrite yet, but for the first time, hope didn't feel like an enemy. The next morning, the cafe felt both familiar and new. Madison moved through routines like choreography she knew by heart, but every motion had a shadow now shaped like Benjamin's voice. The way he'd asked, "Do I still have a chair here?" echoed. She refilled sugar dispensers as if they were thoughts spilling over. Outside, Maple Street yawned awake under a pale spring sun. In small towns, news sleeps lightly. Hope even more so. Across town, Benjamin woke up in his old childhood room. The posters were gone, but the nail holes still told stories. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, dust floating like paused confetti. He lay staring at the ceiling, feeling smaller than his resume. City success had once filled rooms, now silence filled this one. "Welcome home, big shot," he muttered to himself without smiling. Coming back felt less like victory and more like surrender. His mother had left a note on the kitchen table. "Breakfast in the oven. Town meeting at 7. Be there." In this family, love sometimes sounded like firm instructions. The words "be there" underlined twice felt heavier than they looked. He sighed, running a hand through his hair until it stood. Apparently, avoiding the town was no longer on today's agenda. Small towns don't text you, they summon you. By evening, the community hall buzzed with folding chairs and chatter. Madison arranged sign-up sheets on a long, plastic-topped table. The banner read, "Spring Rebuild Project. Neighbors helping neighbors." Pastor Aaron rehearsed announcements, humming an old hymn under breath. Kids ran between rows like Hope with sneakers and sticky fingers. She was checking the volunteer list when the door creaked open. That familiar hush rolled through the room before she even looked. Benjamin stepped inside wearing jeans and a flannel. No armor today. The suit and tie version of him was nowhere to be seen. He looked like he'd borrowed humility from the coat rack outside. A few heads turned, whispers rose and fell like gentle waves. "Well, I'll be. Look who the wind blew back," someone murmured. Pastor Aaron's face lit with something softer than surprise, recognition. "Benjamin, good to see you. Grab a seat, son," he called. Madison's stomach flipped at the word son hanging in the air. It reminded her that God doesn't disown prodigals, even complicated ones. She focused on her clipboard, pretending to double-check the same line. But she felt his presence sit 2 rows behind her like history. During announcements, Pastor Aaron cleared his throat with quiet intention. "We've got barns to repair, roofs to fix, and a bridge to finish. Tonight we're pairing folks up. Nobody rebuilds alone in this town." Names were called. Projects assigned, pens scratched across paper. Emma with Lucas at the food pantry, Jessica on nursery rotation. Madison scribbled notes until she heard her own name aloud. "Madison, you'll lead coordination for the bridge fundraiser and repairs." She nodded, already thinking logistics, donation jars, and bake sale tables. Then Pastor Aaron added, as if it were the simplest thing, "And Benjamin, you'll assist Madison. You know that bridge well." A murmur rippled, half amusement, half, "Oh, this will be something." Madison felt every eye in the room weigh the moment. She turned slowly, meeting Benjamin's startled gaze across the aisle. For a flash, the old boy who ran and the new man collided. He swallowed, then gave the smallest nod as if accepting a sentence. "Sure," he said quietly. "I owe that bridge a lot anyway." The room exhaled, already hungry for the story they weren't owed. After the meeting, people lingered, stacking chairs and exchanging jokes. Madison tried to escape through the service door with a box, but Benjamin intercepted her near the bulletin board full of flyers. "Guess we're officially a team," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. His attempt at lightness landed somewhere between hopeful and terrified. She set the box down, the cardboard echoing between them. "Looks like it," she answered. "The bridge and I both remember you." He winced at the gentle sting laced in her words. "Yeah, I wasn't exactly subtle about wanting out," he admitted. "Used to stand there and stare at the highway like it was heaven." His honesty surprised her. The old Benjamin would have spun a joke. "Highways only show you what's next," she replied softly. "Bridges remind you where you're standing while you choose." He looked at her like she'd just translated something for his soul. They scheduled their first planning session for the next afternoon. Madison arrived early at the cafe with notebooks and color-coded pens. Benjamin showed up carrying a box of old Hale family blueprints. Figured knowing how this town was built might help rebuild it, he said. The gesture tugged at a thread she'd tried to keep tied tight. They spread papers across a corner table, shoulders almost, but not touching. Outside, rain tapped softly on the windows like someone practicing patience. As they worked, he kept catching himself watching her, not the plans. The way she listened when volunteers spoke, pen hovering respectfully. The way she laughed with her whole face, not just polite lips. "You really stayed for all of it," he said suddenly. She looked up, blinking, pen freezing above the margin. "Somebody had to," she replied. "Storms don't schedule themselves around ambition." The sentence hung there, honest, but not cruel. He dropped his gaze to the blueprint of Pine Creek Bridge. His finger traced the beams like reading braille of his past. "I lost a lot out there," he confessed, voice low. "Deals, money, friends who were only friends until the fall." He swallowed, jaw tightening. "But I think the worst thing I lost was myself." Madison sat back, feeling the weight of the admission. Brokenness had finally spoken louder than pride, and she heard it. "You know," she said gently, "this town never stopped praying your name. Not for your success, for your heart not to harden." He let out a breath that sounded dangerously close to a sob. "Feels like prayers caught up to me in the worst way," he muttered. "Nothing left to impress anybody with anymore." "Good," she answered, surprising them both. "Maybe now we can meet honestly." Honesty, in their world, was holier than spotless reputations. Over the next week, preparation became their shared language. They called businesses for donations, designed flyers, organized volunteers. Madison handled people with ease. Benjamin handled logistics like old instincts. Once, when a merchant scoffed over the phone, he flinched visibly. Thought rejection would sting less after the city. He joked thinly. Madison covered the receiver and whispered, "Here, no doesn't define you." In small towns, relationships rewrite what spreadsheets once measured. One evening, they met at the bridge just before sunset. The wood still bore scars from last year's flood and age. Benjamin stared at the water rushing underneath, hands in pockets. "I used to stand here dreaming of leaving," he said quietly. "Now I'm scared the town will never really let me come back." Madison leaned on the railing, elbows chilled by the metal. "We remember," she said, "but remembering isn't the same as rejecting." He turned toward her, eyes raw in the fading light. "About that night. At the bleachers," he began, voice unsteady. "I should have said more. I should have been clearer, kinder, braver. You deserved more than half promises and a tail-light goodbye." The apology wasn't polished. It stumbled out, breathless and real. Madison felt old hurt rise, but it didn't drown her this time. "You broke more than a promise," she answered. But not everything stayed broken. Wind tugged at her hair, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine. For a long moment, they just stood there in shared silence. Not the silence from years ago. This one felt like soil, not ice. "I don't know how to fix all of it," he admitted. "Start by showing up," she said. "For the bridge, for people. Maybe for you." Far off, church bells chimed the hour, steady and familiar. Heaven, it seemed, was quietly marking the beginning of their rebuild. The week of the fundraiser arrived with nervous skies. Clouds piled over Maple Street like undecided thoughts. Flyers Madison designed fluttered on lampposts and shop windows. "Pine Creek Bridge rebuild, one town, one heart," they read. Kids practiced songs for the little stage behind the hall. Businesses promised pies, quilts, gift baskets, and spare dollars. Hope felt fragile, but it was finally louder than rumor. Inside the community hall, the air smelled like coffee and sawdust. Madison taped the last sign above the donation table. Her handwriting curved steady even when her stomach didn't. Emma adjusted fairy lights along the stage, humming off-key. "Tonight's the night," she said. "No backing out now, Mads." Madison exhaled, smoothing the tablecloth like it was her heartbeat. Backing out stopped being an option when he walked back in. Benjamin arrived early, carrying boxes instead of excuses. He hauled folding chairs, checked extension cords, and tested microphones. Sweat darkened the back of his flannel before doors even opened. "If we lose power tonight, I might just take it personally," he joked. Pastor Aaron clapped a hand on his shoulder, eyes kind. "Relax, son. We've done more with less in this town," he said. "In fact, God seems to prefer working with less around here." Madison watched Benjamin climb a ladder to fix a banner. For a strange second, she flashed back to high school bleachers. He'd always been the one climbing higher, reaching past edges. Now, every careful step looked less like ambition, more like service. "Careful up there," she called, reflexive concern slipping out. He glanced down, managed a crooked smile. "Don't worry. If I fall, I'll sign my own liability form." As people began to arrive, the hall filled with familiar noise. Laughter, coat zippers, the squeak of boots on polished floors. The smell of crockpots and baked goods mingled with perfume. Someone started a potluck table that hadn't even been planned. Small towns are experts at improvising generosity on short notice. Madison checked the donation box. A few bills, loose coins. It felt like a mustard seed in a world demanding mountains. Whispers followed Benjamin like an invisible second shadow. "That him?" Someone murmured near the door. "Looks rougher than the last time he breezed through," another said. "I heard he lost everything in some big city crash. Maybe God's finally got his attention," a church elder added quietly. Benjamin pretended not to hear, but his shoulders heard everything. Madison felt each word like cold fingers tapping his past. When it was time to officially start, Pastor Aaron took the mic. He welcomed everyone, cracked a gentle joke about the coffee. Then his tone shifted into something steady and serious. "This bridge has carried our kids, our prayers, and our worries," he said. "It's more than wood. It's our way of reaching each other." He paused, looking toward the back where Benjamin stood half hidden. "And tonight we rebuild not just boards but stories." He motioned for Madison to join him on stage. Her heart hammered, but her feet obeyed anyway. She shared updates, practical details, the financial goal, the timeline. Her voice didn't shake until she began talking about community. "In this town, we don't let storms have the final word," she said. "You showed up after snow, after floods, after losses I can't list. And I believe we'll show up for this too." Then Pastor Aaron did something she hadn't prepared for. He turned to the crowd and said, "We also have help tonight. Someone who knows this town, this bridge, and what it means to leave. Benjamin, come on up here a minute." The room rustled like pages being flipped too fast. Benjamin froze for a heartbeat, eyes wide like a cornered man. Then slowly, he walked toward the stage like it might break under him. Madison stepped aside, making space at the microphone. Up close under the lights, he looked less like a headline, more like a human. He cleared his throat once, then again, fingers gripping the stand. "I used to stand on that bridge and dream of escaping," he began. "I thought success meant never coming back here." Soft murmurs rippled through the crowd like old pages turning. "I was wrong about more things than I can count." He took a breath, eyes scanning faces that knew his old chapters. "I chased numbers, deals, rooms full of strangers who clapped for me. But when everything collapsed, no one knew my middle name." A sad, crooked smile flickered at his mouth. "I remembered this town. The casseroles, the church bells, the bridge. I remembered a girl who asked me not to let success make me a stranger." Madison sucked in a breath, feeling the memory land between them. "Truth is," Benjamin continued, voice roughening, "I became one anyway. A stranger to you, to this place, and to myself. I can't pay back every mistake I made out there or here. But I can start by rebuilding something I once took for granted." He gestured toward the fundraising thermometer painted on poster board. "If you're willing, I'd like to help carry the weight this time." Silence settled, not cold but contemplative, like a held breath. Then someone started clapping, loudly, firmly, from the back. It was old George from the nursing home leaning on his cane. "Welcome home, boy," he called. "We've all messed up loud." Laughter broke out, relieved and warm, sprinkling over the room. Others joined the applause, some with tears shining in their eyes. Acceptance in small towns isn't always spoken, but tonight it was audible. Benjamin blinked hard, swallowing emotion like something burning. Madison stepped back to the mic, voice steadying again. "You heard him?" she said, a small smile tugging her lips. "Nobody rebuilds alone here, not bridges, not people. If you can give money, give. If you can give time, give. If all you have tonight is a prayer, that counts more than you know." Heads nodded, eyes lowered, hearts opening like windows in spring. For a moment it felt like heaven was leaning in to listen. The evening unfolded in waves of generosity she hadn't dared expect. Kids emptied piggy banks into the donation box with giggles. Local businesses auctioned baskets, dinners, and car tune-ups. A farmer offered lumber at cost, another his crew for labor. Emma's off-key singing somehow charmed more bids than the polished duet. Madison watched the red bar on the fundraiser board climb slowly. Small amounts stacked like prayers, humble but persistent. During a lull, Benjamin slipped outside to catch his breath. Madison found him leaning against the brick wall under dim lights. His tie, borrowed for the occasion, hung loosened around his neck. "You did good in there," she said softly, folding her arms. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "I almost threw up. Pride doesn't usually come with nausea," she replied. That was humility. He exhaled, a sound halfway between a sigh and a confession. "I kept waiting for someone to stand up and list my failures," he admitted. "Tell everyone why I don't deserve a say in rebuilding anything." Madison tilted her head, studying the man in front of her. "In this town, we catalog our own failures just fine," she said gently. "We don't need public humiliation to know where we've fallen short. We need each other to remember we're more than those falls." He looked at her like her words were a language he was relearning. As they re-entered the hall, Pastor Aaron waved them over. He pointed at the board where the red line now almost touched the goal. "One last pledge just came in," he said, eyes twinkling. "A donor from out of town. Wanted to stay anonymous." The amount pushed them just past the number she'd been praying for. Madison felt tears prick her eyes, throat tightening with gratitude. "Looks like the bridge is getting its second chance," he smiled. She glanced at Benjamin, wondering if the anonymous donor was him. He only shrugged, lips curved in a small, private smile. Whether it was his money, someone else's, or both didn't matter now. What mattered was that the town had chosen to believe in rebuilding, in wood and rope, in second chances and humbled hearts. As people began to gather their coats and leftovers, Madison exhaled deeply. The night had not fixed everything, but something holy had shifted. The fundraiser had met its goal, but the story was not finished. In small towns, rebuilding moves from applause to daily routine fast. Madison woke the next week with sunlight cutting softly through lace curtains. She packed notebooks, thermos coffee, and prayer in the same tote bag. Because faith here didn't look dramatic, it looked prepared and present. Benjamin had agreed to meet her at Pine Creek Bridge, and she felt the weight of showing up humming again inside her ribs. Benjamin arrived first, hands gripping railing, breath visible in cold air. He watched the river push forward with loud persistence under old beams. "Always moving somewhere," he muttered, remembering his younger self in third person. The man who left had chased motion without noticing foundation below feet. The man who returned now feared motion wouldn't let him land again. Madison walked up beside him quietly and said, "Just because the river moves doesn't mean the bridge didn't carry you." A beam cracked slightly under last winter's flood wounds now being patched. Sound could roar, but towns always subtitle silence differently. Benjamin stepped forward, finger tracing splintered wood like reading Braille regrets fully. "I don't even know where to start fixing all of this," he confessed. She crouched slightly, glancing carefully at wood grain like story tenants' internal details. "In this town, we fix boards one by one," she said gently. "Same goes for hearts that come back quieter, but real." The town began to work, quietly assembling lumber, tightening bolts, repainting rails. Benjamin joined volunteer crews organized Poor Benjamin's bridge crew. He carried beams heavier than any boardroom headline applause schedules once measured. Farmers nodded recognition. Teachers poured extra mugs of coffee. Once, Benjamin tripped on a loose plank, almost falling backward. Madison steadied the beam alongside him, eyes narrowing, careful no evaluation. "Heavy timber, humbled heart," elderly merchant Tom said like Sportcast Ledger. Mid-afternoon, a teenage boy from the youth group dropped his toolbox accidentally, screws scattering across the planks like metallic confetti echoes. Benjamin crouched instantly, collecting screws faster than his pride could recover narrative. "You good down there, Ben?" young Lucas asked. "Yeah," he replied. I found my pace, I guess." Collecting screws like collecting humility's second voice team. Small pace, real pace. Public pace Faith once memorized. At supper, the town gathered by the long wooden tables they had hauled together inside the Wilkins barn. Food smelled loud: turkey, gravy, buttered corn, and sweet memory pies. Madison thanked volunteers by name, because credit here isn't sparkle, it's recognition. Benjamin watched how faces lit gently when their names were spoken twice. "Guess love pays attention different around here," elderly Harlan muttered. Madison underlined quietly. "Transformation builds towns here piecewise." October winds rattled softly, but December weather rehearsed harsher seasonal roles. Benjamin wiped sweat from brow, glancing trucks lined parish rails. No TTY script. "You okay, honey?" "Long winter," Mom Clerk Harlan mused. "But working sameness rewrite each time winter returns." Benjamin's shoulders listened before his ears could translate. Madison's pen hovered over donation sheets rattling barns around town. Because numbers buy cement rarely, community builds stronger than paychecks. At twilight, children rehearsed songs. Benjamin stacked folded chairs after meeting eventual warmth. His reflection in donation jars shimmered like silver gloss under emotional not hero. Madison caught Emma's eye privately. "Look who the wind blew back." Her heart hummed again. Thaw came slower, but it had come. He'd walked ladders without vomiting pride's stage this time, and heaven had clearly heard her chilly prayer months ago, preparing the road where returning hearts might press, recognize home again. Small towns speak their truths like seasons, some sharp, some tender, always communal. Benjamin finally said, "Maybe now I can sit different." Madison watched his hand reach for a volunteer roster pen. The town exhaled gently, like acceptance had been scheduled by heaven. "Start by showing up," she replied. His nod carried more than agreement. It carried willingness. Sometimes grace waits for the smallest honest nod. She photographed the moment Para O'Hale Family Farm Committee with dust lens warm gem, as if amassing biographies of the region's rustic theology. Benjamin leaned in mid-sigh, camera capturing unshed emotion tats. "You did good for the bridge," Emma whispered. He answered softly, "If I fall, I file my own liability already." Madison nearly smiled, noticing how promises spoken twice endurance him differently now. The next day was scheduled for repairing rails, delivering baskets, counting screws. Not for headlines pride would once have pitched first. Madison coordinated paint, bolts, voices, and thermos coffee without color-style mentions. Benjamin checked plans, but mostly checked presents now too. "Town treating you okay, boy?" a merchant teased. Madison's subtle replied, "Good, maybe now we meet honestly." In their world, seasonal doesn't override foundation. Presence holds longer. Storms tested barns, but storms don't holler at Madison's schedule whisper insulation villas. "Good," Pastor Aaron said. When ghost meets humble, heaven leans to witness the rebuild too. Madison felt that quiet lightning of prayer answers sting differently now. Gratitude. The town was the gauge. Heaven was the witness. And while the river moved, they both began to rebuild pace-wise anyway. Toward dusk, trucks lined by hardware shelves outskirts quietly preparing narrative ends. Benjamin tipped Coco back but warmed by lantern hymn memory nets. Madison exhaled gratefully. Some scenes finally shift positions piecewise. Food trays packed under seat near fundraisers only persisted for mission more so. "Welcome a non-donor, huh?" Emma teased, glancing first-second payroll beams of sunrise. But chapters rewrite slowly differently without spotlight repeat detection explicit. Even choir vents hummed. Big world dims shine, but ceilings schedule consensus differently. Evenings passed. Boards realign, hearts realign slower. Benjamin came back not to impress, but to rebuild. And while Madison didn't know how many moments were still queued, her heart finally felt hope hum instead of scream. Because Grace didn't replay, it rewrote the man who showed up. The credits were not rolling. The restoration was only warming up. The bridge reopening landed on a Saturday with clear skies. Pine Creek shimmered below like it had something to prove. Fresh planks stretched across the water, pale and sturdy. New railings gleamed with white paint and hopeful fingerprints. Madison arrived early, breath puffing little clouds in the air. She ran her hand along the rail, feeling rough spots smoothed. "This is what redemption looks like in wood," she whispered. Benjamin parked farther down the road than he needed to. He could have pulled right up to the main lot. But humility, he'd learned, prefers the long walk in. Each step kicked up little puffs of gravel and memory. His pulse thudded in his ears like a nervous drumline. "Okay, Hale," he muttered. "No speeches, just show up and work." It sounded suspiciously like a prayer under his breath. When he turned the bend, the bridge came into full view. Fresh lumber, bright railings, flags strung like quiet celebration. He stopped for a heartbeat, chest tightening with recognition. This was the place he'd once used as a launch pad to run. Now it looked more like a doorway he was being invited through. Madison spotted his silhouette and froze mid-step on the path. For a second, she simply watched him keep choosing to walk closer. He reached her with a breath that poured out like relief. "You beat me here," he said, even though he'd tried to arrive early. "Some of us never left," she answered, a wry smile softening the edge. She handed him a roll of tape and a stack of signs. "Can you mark the walking path for the kids' parade?" It wasn't glamorous, but it was ordinary and needed. He nodded, oddly grateful for a job that didn't need applause. They tied ribbons along the railing where children would walk. One ribbon refused to knot, slipping through Madison's fingers again. Benjamin stepped closer, fingers brushing hers as he took it. "Here," he said quietly. "Let me try a different way." His touch was brief, but it carried years of unsaid apologies. Her pulse jumped, reminding her how unfinished her heart still was. This time, she didn't pull away. She let the help stay. Soon the crowd gathered, filling the open space by the bridge. Pastor Aaron cleared his throat at a small portable microphone. Families formed a half circle, kids cross-legged in the front row. Behind them, the newly rebuilt bridge waited like a patient witness. "We're not here because we've never seen floods," he began. "We're here because floods don't get the last word in this town." Madison felt those words settle in places winter had once frozen. He spoke of storms and broken beams and neighbors who showed up. He thanked crews by name, calling volunteers quiet engineers of hope. Then his gaze found Benjamin near the edge of the crowd. "Some rebuilding happens in wood and nails," the pastor said. "Some happens inside hearts that finally stop running long enough to heal." Heads turned toward Benjamin without malice, only honest curiosity. Benjamin shifted his weight, but no one dragged him to the front. Instead, Pastor Aaron called Madison to stand by the ribbon. Someone placed oversized silver scissors carefully in her hands. Red fabric stretched across the entrance, trembling in the breeze. "For the girl who stayed and kept the lights on," he said, "who proved that faith can be stubborn in the best ways." Applause rose, not explosive, but deep and affectionate. Benjamin swallowed hard, pride humbled by the truth of it. Madison scanned faces she'd served in 100 small ways. She saw casseroles dropped off after funerals, driveways shoveled in snow. She saw prayers whispered in hospital halls and laughter shared at booths. Her gaze found Benjamin, and for a moment the noise dimmed. "This bridge doesn't erase what we've lost," she said into the mic, "but it proves we're not finished, no matter what tried to break us. And neither are the people who walk across it." The scissors closed with a clean metallic snip, and the crowd cheered. Children charged forward first, waving crayon-decorated banners in the air. Boards creaked slightly under the happy stampede of little feet. Adults followed slower, some wiping their eyes with the back of their hands. Benjamin hung back near the edge of the grass, watching quietly. Madison stayed beside the post, suddenly unsure if she should cross yet. Second chances, she realized, can weigh more than first ones ever did. "Walk with me?" His voice floated from just over her shoulder. She turned to find Benjamin standing there, hands open, shoulders uncertain. He wasn't assuming a place, he was asking for one. If we're really rebuilding, maybe we should start by crossing together. The invitation wrapped itself around old ache and new grace at once. Madison studied him for a long heartbeat that felt like a page flipping. Then she nodded, the gesture small but undeniably real. They stepped onto the bridge side by side, pace unhurried. Beneath them, Pine Creek pushed forward, indifferent to human drama. Children's laughter drifted back from the far end like a benediction. Each plank they crossed remembered every version of them that stood here. The boy who dreamed of leaving and the girl who feared being left. The man who failed loudly and the woman who learned to stay quietly. Now, two different people were learning how to move in the same direction. Halfway across, they stopped without planning it, hands on the railing. From here, the whole town looked smaller and strangely more sacred. Steeple, rooftops, and familiar streets clustered like a held-together memory. "I used to stand here and think I was too big for all this," Benjamin said, voice low enough that only she could hear. "Turns out I was just too small on the inside back then." Madison let out a soft, bittersweet breath at the honesty. She kept her eyes on the water, fingers tapping the rail. "You hurt me," she said simply, without extra decoration. He flinched, but he didn't reach for excuses this time. "I know," he answered, "and I won't ask you to pretend I didn't. I'd like the chance to be someone different from the man who left." Silence settled between them, not empty, but thoughtful, like a jury listening. Wind slid past, carrying pine and river and something like possibility. "I don't know what different looks like yet," Madison admitted. "I don't have a script or some movie-perfect forgiveness scene, but I've watched you show up when no cameras were rolling. I've heard more truth from you in weeks than in all our teenage years. That matters more to me than any headline you ever chased." She turned then, facing him fully on the narrow stretch of wood. "I won't promise you everything, but I won't slam the door either." Emotion flickered across his face, unguarded and almost young for a second. "Madison," he said, like a confession wrapped inside her name. "If all I get is a crack in the door, I'll treat it like a miracle. I don't deserve it, but I'll live like I do, by showing up." His fingers tightened on the railing, knuckles pale against painted wood. "I want to learn how to stay, even when it would be easier to run." The words sounded like vows he was making to the bridge itself. Without overthinking, she let her hand slide closer along the rail. Their fingers brushed once, testing the distance between before and after. He didn't grab. He waited, breathing like someone on holy ground. Slowly, deliberately, Madison let her hand rest in his open palm. Not clenched, not dramatic, just present. Warm, unmistakably there. For him, it felt heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. For her, it felt like an answered prayer walking out of winter. They stood like that, side by side, while the creek kept moving. No one on shore seemed to notice. The moment belonged to them and God. The bridge creaked softly underneath, as if stretching into new purpose. "This doesn't erase what happened," Madison said after a while. "But it means I believe God can write more pages than we ruined." Benjamin nodded, eyes bright, thumb barely brushing her knuckles. For the first time, I'm okay with him holding the pen. When they finally walked the rest of the way across together, the town was waiting with lemonade and paper cups and easy smiles. Emma arched a brow when she spotted their joined hands, then grinned. "In this town, we love a good comeback," she called out. "And we serve lemonade with every resurrection, you know that." Madison rolled her eyes, but she didn't let go of his hand. This time, she wasn't the only one choosing to stay. Small towns remember footprints, but heaven remembers hearts. Madison thought love had packed its bags without a return trip. Benjamin believed coming back meant buying back the story with success. But God had other plans. Redemption first, recognition after. This was never just a love story between two people. It was proof that pride can be loud, but grace is louder. And transformation begins when someone finally stays to listen. Madison kept showing up long before she knew she was the chapter. She poured coffee for strangers who felt more like neighbors. She held ribbons and beams that storms once shook loose. She became crown in silence instead of sparkle in spotlight. Benjamin returned thinking the town would judge him until his collapse became the sermon he never prepared to preach. But acceptance here didn't need theatrics, only honesty. Benjamin learned that victories are sweeter when they're surrendered first. He carried lumber instead of headlines, questions instead of pride. He allowed nausea, apology, vulnerability, and stillness. Madison handed him tape, screws, root signs, and peace curriculum. And each time he accepted the assignment without armor. Because redemption sounds more like obedience than applause. Small nods sometimes weigh more than loud vows ever did. They rebuilt a bridge that reopened a doorway inside both timelines. Boards realigned. Hands realigned cautiously once more. Even the river pushed forward like it was subpoenaed by hope. Benjamin asked for chairs instead of assuming stages. Madison allowed presence instead of granting perfection. Faith that rebuild from fallout dinner tables re-enter curriculum mysteriously. Because grace doesn't hit replay, it chooses redemption's official pace-wise. Benjamin looked at Madison and saw something success had no blueprint for. Madison looked at Benjamin and recognized transformation had a silhouette too. Not the boy who left, but the man who stayed to rebuild. Sometimes, scars aren't signs of endings, but signatures of rounding storms. Benjamin tapped rail gently. If doors open crackwise, I'll show up. Madison smiled softly. Maybe now real story starts, seasonal never ends. Because real love is built by presence, not postcards or postmortems. The town gossiped less as gratitude matured. Pastor Aaron said once, "Heaven works louder in humility fields." They nodded and hammered nails, delivering baskets, auctioning pies, photographing moments she could label but not dramatize. Madison exhaled. Finally, a woman thawed in soul audible. Benjamin exhaled. Prodigal humbled in shoulders audible. Both concluded. Sometimes grace aligns what crowd speech never did. Benjamin and Madison learned returning doesn't fix everything instantly, but it does pair questions with willingness and brokenness with humility. Some currency buys cement rarely. Casserole repairs quicker, community clearer. Snowflakes once symbolized endings, now they symbolized endurance differently. Benjamin whispered surnames like disclaimers. Less speeches daily show up. Madison folded chairs like hard insulation internal community watchers accepted. Credits rolled? No. Restoration started. Lucas Gray said again. They drank cocoa at dawn near the Granny Lois Cafe benches. Kids' rainbow banners crayon-decorated synergy was oatmeal prophetic. Benjamin tipped mug carefully. Some reorder me, but no script needed. Madison tapped knuckles gently. Chairs open. Grace is here lingers. In small towns, resurrection sneaks into routines like dust motes under heaven light. Benjamin asked, "Do I still have place?" Madison answered, "Place stays open." God clapped through radiator vents like prayer consensus internally aligned languid. Benjamin stood at the far end of the rebuild project board. I was too loud about leaving. Now I want to learn how to stay. He had said weeks before, and tonight, it finally sounded true. Madison added stickers for donors who signed up for toy drive lists. Small steps toward everyday, never foregone emotionally audible future. Storms tested barns, but barns rebuild slower than hearts realign. But they both persisted faith-wise anyway. She wrote one last paragraph at the end of her notebook. It was not fancy. It was honest, in third person, but personal. Some hearts leave thinking headlines mean home. Others stay until grace learns to speak. Benjamin's footsteps no longer echoed like abandonment but recognition slip. Madison's heart finally hummed forgiven lessons instead of unsaid bleacher courtroom tenants. Boston got your name wrong, but God kept the blueprint, she whispered, not needing reply because heaven writes fluently anyway. Benjamin looked at the town map pinned on community hall board. Zip code's identity was too small for me. Turns out soul was too noisy, he mused. Madison smiled, noticing redemption can walk without replay recognition. Not everything stays seasonal in towns. Some things get rebuilt by persistence, Councilwoman Janet Miller said again. Madison nodded, handing toolbox lists to out-of-town donors. Benjamin stepped forward to repaint rails for colder winter scars. Madison crouched to photograph screws, bolts, donation pie rosters. No one dragged him on stage. Instead, they let him rebuild. Because in small-town America, grace doesn't holler. It lingers long enough to be felt, carried, prayed, mailed, built, and held. Benjamin exhaled, eyes bright. Madison exhaled, throat quiet. Heaven, it seemed, was rehearsing epilogues of rebuilding softly. February frost melted, but fear-specific electricity barns tested silences. What's broke? God holds steady. Nursing home elder sighed. Madison sipped thermos coffee, quietly noticing Benjamin, not the script. The man stays willing to pray twice and rebuild gradually. Grandpa Harlan mused when snow melted, but voice cracked more sagely. Madison coordinated donors without extra information. She delivered coffee community boxes for season storms eventually tested. Benjamin's flannel looked more like vow than coat struggle headlines to impress. Madison saw his shoulders half-light evaluation careful one-line average. He whispered surname disclaimers. Take time shows up. Madison smiled back. If I fall, I file my own liability. Town Gazette posts titled, Hope rebuilds slower than spotlight applause. Wind rattled steady across the Wilkins Barn fundraiser file hub. Benjamin's breath synced her heart's private shelf possible. Madison read route signs, careful internaled, delivering casseroles. Guess love rebuilds what success never shouted, Lucas teased again. Madison inhaled cinnamon from October donation heaters fix patch. At twilight, children took lemonade cup. Benjamin took repentant stroll. Madison photographed red lines rail. Boards rebuild slower but present. Time moves slow. Truth moves slower, elderly Baker Graves muttered. Madison nodded, carrying clipboard in tote silent prayer twice in margin. Benjamin looked up, eyes bright. Madison looked at the railing in his hand. No grand speeches, only continuity, small-town currency. She finally crossed the bridge God rebuilt gently between margins. Storms test barns, grace rebuild hearts when river moves forward anyway. This was never replay. It was redemption's official pace-wise. Stay, the pastor said. Not as a demand, but as a destination Benjamin was finally willing to recognize. Madison didn't know what tomorrow would ask from them yet. But she knew this. Love built by presence carries heavier crowns than success built on applause ever will. And Benjamin? He stayed long enough to hear the quiet tenet. Sometimes grace asks only for one direction, not both. This time, the direction was toward the bridge, and toward himself. Benjamin and Madison walked off the bridge. The town applauded gently, but heaven applauded louder in everyday restorations than any summoning slip. Because grace stays near long enough to rebuild what storms tested without permission. Madison whispered amen at porch language God-fluent schedule-wise anyway. Benjamin tapped rail gently. His vow now jived small, but real. Then she shrugged and smiled. Welcome back, boy. Not replay, rebuild. Amen.